Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
All right, here we are again, another episode, season 2. Last time we got to know Matt Huffnagel, the co-host. So this week we get to know yours truly, the co-host. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, I'm excited about this one in some ways, and in others I'm disappointed. You're going to do all the talking, and you know how I feel about that.
You'll get your 2 cents in for sure.
I'm sure I have a way of doing that, for better or worse. But no, I'm looking forward to this as well. I thought, like we discussed last week, people getting a little bit of a chance to know us a little bit better, which we took for granted, I think, a little bit, how we made some assumptions, and then talking to people, we thought this was a good idea. So this is part 2 of it, and then next podcast we'll get back into some guests, and that'll be exciting as well. And as you were just talking to me here for the last, like we always do, half hour, we get going. We've got some awesome guests lined up, and I'm excited for those, and I'm sure you are too.
It's funny. 100 years ago, well, back in 1990, when I graduated high school and went to college, played golf, right? Played college golf. And I remember a college professor saying, you should be a teacher. Like, you just have a knack of reaching out. You love communicating and helping people. And I said, no way. I don't want to be a teacher. I'm going to be a rich, famous businessman, right? And of course, I look back, and some of it's because I just played golf. My sole identity was Paul Richmond, the golfer. And after college, I went and had a brief stint down in Florida on some mini tours. And you just realize at that point, you have to make a decision, right? Are you even any good, or is it worth the pursuit? And my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, wife now, to clarify that, just started a job up in New York as a school counselor. So I made the decision. I mean, that's what's important to me. Came back and
Sure.
worked in finance, and I'm like, I like the fact people are into finances and numbers. And I worked for a pretty large credit union that you know well, and ran a small branch office, but I just didn't see the sense of just showing up 9 to 5 every day. And I actually remembered what my college professor said. I went back to school nights to get my master's and become a teacher. And that happened in 1996. And I've been teaching for 26 years now. So it's amazing. Teaching, coaching. And the best part of it is we were talking pre-podcast today, how you've reinvented yourself several times.
Yep.
I've done the same thing. And I think the scary part, what I tell seniors now is, you're going to go do a job for the next 30 years. So be careful. And there's nothing wrong with that. But even within that job, you should be reinventing yourself. Does that make sense?
100%.
So I think back when I started teaching, started coaching a little. I still love the game of golf. So I coached golf at a local community college. By then, my wife and I had kids, and she used to say, you love coaching. Aren't you going to coach them? I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to be that guy. And it was funny. And as time went on, I'm missing some of their early T-ball games. And it just hit me like, what I love coaching and helping others, but personally, my first priority should be my family.
Of course.
Not that you can't do both, right?
For sure.
So I resigned from the college golf, and that was my first, I went from business to teaching. Then I reinvented myself again, because I really became a coach, but in a sport I'd never dreamed I'd coach, which was softball. So for the next 12 plus years, as they got older and took a liking to it, we're traveling the country and coaching. And now I'm coaching the high school team at the time, and things are going strong. And it's amazing, the relationships and the people you can help when you coach in general. So fast forward to them going away to college. My one daughter's a retired student athlete. She was on the podcast. We had a great conversation. She's a school counselor, loving her life. And my other daughter's still playing in college. But I started, in the meantime, when they didn't need me as a coach anymore, then I started coaching varsity volleyball. It's like, how did that even happen? But it's the same skills. It's helping people. It's building relationships, getting people to buy all in. And that's gone on 8 years. And I added JV basketball, and I thought that's what I'd do the rest of my life. But COVID hit, and I reinvented myself again, because we went almost a whole year with no sports, right? We couldn't do
Yep.
anything. And that's when I'm like, well, what am I going to do with myself? And that's when I became securities licensed, and we talked about that, and have a financial business with growing clients now. I still coach a little, but not as much. So not only, I guess, am I reinventing myself, which we can talk about later is important for anybody. I'm reinventing myself, but I'm using my old self to build a stronger new self. Like I didn't give up the coaching. I just coached new stuff. When I got into the financial planning and business, I didn't give up coaching. I'm just coaching less high school kids, and I'm coaching more adults now.
Sure.
And then, it's sort of complicated. I took that new job where I met you, that we'll get back to in a little bit. And I have the freedom to help kids pursue anything they want. And we have business partners, you and me, because of that now.
Yep.
And, I'll stop there, because we can get into what I teach now. We can get into that business with those students, and we can get into even my financial stuff and even my coaching. Maybe I'll let you ask a few questions, but at 49 years old, my students were laughing the other day, and my family laughs all the time. I don't think my best self has been on this planet yet. Like, I love everything I've done in the past, and I'm thankful for it, especially when old past students come and talk to me. But the fact I've been doing this, I don't think I've hit full stride yet.
Yeah, which I'm glad you said that, because that leads me to one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, that I think is probably on the tip of most people's tongues who know you or just know of you through this or some other things. The question that comes to mind, Paul, is I would look at you from the outside and say, okay, here's this guy who's been teaching for, did you say 26 years? 26 years. You've got the security and all the wonderful things that go with that commitment you made. Your wife has a similar kind of career that you've mentioned before, and she's in a wonderful place. You've put your kids to some degree, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but my impression is, you've helped them get through college. You've spent tremendous amounts of time with them as they've grown up, and whether it's competing in sports, whether it's softball, basketball, what have you, helping in their education through through elementary, high school, been a big part of it. Traveled the country, traveled the world in some instances. I know you've been with your family, done all these wonderful things, and at a very young age, at least in my opinion, you're in a position to kind of just ride off in the sunset, Paul. Grab your golf clubs again, dust them off. Your kids are on a great path in life. Your wife's in a position that's very advantageous. You're in an advantageous position in terms of retirement and pensions and all these things. What are you doing? Why mess with any of this stuff? Why get involved in it? You're set up, and in so many ways, and I mean this, you nailed it. You're living you set yourself up in the dream scenario. People got to look at you and go, what's wrong with you? Just ride off in the sunset and enjoy. Why don't you?
I get that a lot, especially from some teacher friends, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? I look back to my golf days. I was so blinded by the fact I wanted to be a professional golfer. I mean, there's nothing wrong with thinking that. I went for it. I fell. But my identity was just that. I didn't even know what was out there. And now I love the game. It taught me so much discipline and hard work, and the fact that there's no guarantees for success, even if you go all in. Wouldn't trade it for the world. It was a means to an end. But when I was coaching college golf, and my daughters were doing other things, and I decided to resign from that and help them, it opened up a whole new world that I realized I just like competing. Like, that's my lifestyle. And so I was a little lost after I stopped competing in golf, because what do you do, right?
Yeah.
I found it again when I coached college golf. Then I found it even more when you invest the emotion of your own kids while you do it. But then they've grown up, but I kept the theme competing, right? And to me, that's what life's all about. Now, you add meaning in with that competition. Like I certainly have lost more in life when I coach and help others than I've won, as far as maybe championships and this, that, and the other thing. But when we talk about our four pillars, truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective, looking back, I like the perspective of what I did as a young man playing golf, but I didn't have any meaning behind it really, except selfish, personal. But I think that's probably the age. But when I got older, I started realizing I can take all this competitive attitude and fiery, the beliefs I have that fire me up when it comes to competition, and I can help transform that into other people and get them to live their best lives. And in doing so, I'm living my best life. I hope I didn't rant too much for that. Like, I feel like that's why I keep doing it.
No, you didn't. In fact, one of the things that you checked off my list there is, how did you deal with the fact that you had an identity crisis from the golfer? You looked at yourself, you said it earlier, and I had that question written, so it was funny because I've been there myself. This is who I am. This is who I am. This is how we all get the question, what do you do? Or, we identify as something. I've had that kind of taken away from me a couple times over my life as well, whether I wanted it or not. And then dealing with that and where do you go from there? And that's what I wanted to get at, which is what you just said.
Oh, it's funny. My daughters and I talk about this a lot, wife included. I mean, she's a school counselor. It's okay to have an identity growing up and push for something, even if it's athletics. I'm a huge athletic supporter, but it gets a little dangerous when you're nearing the twilight of your career. Like, what are you going to do next? And I think that happens even with pro athletes, right? What do you do next? What do you do next? And I don't know if you have to have a plan. I just think you have to realize that's going to happen. And the second thing that keeps me going is, listen, I taught social studies for years along with business before where I teach now. Love watching older movies. Love any historical movie that has a good story attached to it, right? But I don't, besides a few little things, I don't watch much TV anymore, because one day that hit me too. Like, I'm watching these great stories of people living and struggling, and it had nothing to do with money. It usually had to do with freedom, right? But they're all dead now. Like, I'm not trying to get, dark into this. So why would I just sit on the couch the rest of my life and watch stories about what other people accomplished? Like, I want to have my story, and trust me, I don't think they're making a movie on it anytime soon. We talk about that, but like, what is there to lose? And us educators, we grow up, let's face it, we trade time for freedom. Okay. We work half a year, and instead of making money when I was younger, I put that time and freedom into my family. I don't regret that for 100 years, but I think since we've reconnected a couple years ago, you've seen a transformation of what I'm doing. And a large part of that's just being around people like you all the time. Like, you can do it. Why can't I do it? And we can get into my course in a minute. I teach a course where I'm encouraging kids to do it. I felt like a hypocrite if I didn't do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, it does. It does. And I'm sure some of it had to do with timing with your family situation. Your daughter's getting older and ready to kind of move on in their lives. I think that, along with, like you said, you're the people. I say to the kids and daughter, remember, you're the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's who you're going to be, and it influences us. But I want to back up on something you said that on one of the questions I had written down that I think we need to spend some time on is, tell us about what you do teach and what you're doing about, because I think it is, Paul, I probably reference your class 5 times a week to just strangers, to unknown people, whether it involves what I do with it or not. It's not because I'm telling them about what I do with it. It's that you need to know this is going on out here. You got to hear about it. And my perception, Paul, is not just that it's a great program, but it's a great program because of what I've seen, the growth in it. I've seen what it started at and where it is now. And it is so much better. I give kudos to all the people who gave you the opportunity to start it. You know, you're not responsible for that as far as I know, but you are responsible for what it's kind of become and continuing, I'm sure, to become as time goes on. But talk about it a little bit. We talk about it in this podcast, but I don't think people know what exactly you do. So please tell us.
Yeah. So I've talked about a lot of reinventing myself through coaching, right? And in a business sense. And 7 years ago, you know, I was 8 years ago, 8 years ago, I was 18 years into my normal high school teaching experience and coaching and love and life, teaching seniors, participation in government and economics. And I went and spoke at this program at our local vocational school called New Visions. And I'm like, this is the neatest thing. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call and they say, hey, we got an opening. We've created a section of this program called Innovation, Leadership, and Business, and we want you to run it. So I go interview, I get the job. And when I started, I didn't realize what I actually got to do. And I'm an enigma in a sense with teaching, because I know teachers have a lot of mandates. They have a lot of pressures. Every year governments want more and more and more, and they don't give them any more time. There's more responsibilities that you could struggle with the pay. I understand that. So when I say I love teaching so much, it's my experience. I can't help that, right? So
Right.
New Visions it's a New York State program. It started in the mid to late 90s. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I wasn't teaching then. And we get to go and recruit kids from area high schools when they're juniors. And they apply, they interview, and I only accept a set few. And I have 12 to 14 students in the morning between 9 and 11. And then I have another batch coming in from 12 to 2. They come when they're a senior in high school. So they're meeting people from all other schools that they don't know. And they spend the second half of their day or first half of their day back at their regular high school so they can have that regular senior experience. They still play sports at their school. They can still be class president. But when they come to my school, my program, all bets are off on traditional education. So our New Visions, we have health and medical careers, we have human services and education, and then we have innovation, leadership, and business. And so one other layer to that before I get into some of the specifics of what we do, they get 15 to 18 college credits. They get their 6 college English credits. They get a professionalism credit, public speaking credit, first year experience credit, and they have a chance for some service learning. And they get their high school social studies. So back at their high school, all they really have to take is gym class and some electives. And then they come to New Visions and we do everything else. So before I move on, or maybe you have a question at this point, it's basically almost like a prep school. So the purpose of coming to my innovation leadership business class is to explore careers in business.
Yeah, and honestly, no, I don't want to ask because I like the momentum. So what does that mean? Keep going with that. This
Sure.
is what I want to hear.
So we do have a textbook, but really the class is more about experiencing and juggling 15 things at once. It's not about taking tests. So I have an entrepreneurship textbook, and every week they have an outline to do. They have a test to take. It's all done on Microsoft Teams. We look at it. You know, that's great. They're learning. They ask questions. We go over that on Mondays. I love it when a senior comes to me and thinks they want to be an engineer, thinks they want to be an architect, or I just want to be a rich entrepreneur. That's a fun one to deal with because they think it just happens naturally. Or they just don't know, or it's sports management. But I love it when they come into my class, just sure they know what they want to do. And the first question I ask them is, well, what else is there out there? Well, I don't know. I like sports, so I want to be in a career in sports. Or, well, I hurt my ACL and I want to be a physical therapist now because I saw what they do. So I make it my mission to talk them out of that career all year. And two things happen. They either become more committed ever to do the career because they've seen other options, or they say, wow, they're literally, I don't want to get too Disney-ish, Lion King-ish, but there's a whole new world out there that I didn't even know. And so they form LinkedIn accounts, they connect with people, and they go out on rotations or shadows or internships every Tuesday. I have a ton of connections from the community, so sometimes I kickstart them on that. And then on Friday, we go on a lot of class trips places. And I guess we can get into that a little. So there's the individual development on learning entrepreneurship and learning how to meet people in the new world and step out of your comfort zone and make contacts and go learn about careers. But then we do a lot of class projects. Right now, we're working with the local Chamber of Commerce on a restaurant week. So the kids have had to form teams, a logo, meet with the Chamber of Commerce weekly. They're going to go out to all the restaurants and pitch the idea, and there's going to be little punch cards and a discount for a week. Before COVID, we worked with yours truly, Matt, and we,
Yep.
I don't know if the viewers know, you promote a lot of shows, and you would basically hand the class money. I mean, I don't mean necessarily hand the class money, but we had a budget, and we'd bring in performers, whether they're comedians or singers or speakers, to our local 1,600 seat arena, and they'd learn how to promote shows, and they'd understand you can make or lose money by this. And you were happier when we made money.
Always, but the experience and education part of it is so vital to them, and not to get, but you're talking about a couple things hit me with what you're saying. Number one, you're putting them out in the real world, and I just can't. I mean, I've always thought that was important, of course, but it never seems more important than it does now. They actually have to go, and I talk to them, and I've, they'll reach out to me, and they have to be professional. They have to go out and do it on their own, and there's just so much value in that. And you talk about relationships and what they've done. I didn't even tell you this, but just yesterday I heard from someone in business locally who one of your old students applied for a position there, and that person reached out to me because they had me listed as my business, one of my businesses listed on something they'd been involved in at one point. So you never know where these relationships are going to go, and how they're going to influence your life. And that's just a real world thing that happened 24 hours ago. So what you're doing and the positions you're putting them in to have to do real world things is invaluable to them. Even though they might not know it in the moment, it really is. And I just think the program is just incredible. And I just have so much respect for what you've done, and I've seen it grow from the inside. And what they're doing now versus what they were doing 6 or 7 years ago when I first got involved, it's very different in a lot of ways, and I would say improved. And as you would expect, you start here and you try to improve on it, but it's really something special. And I just wanted people to be aware of it, and that, and I'm looking here at some of the questions I've written as we've gone here, and you answer most of them, on the way. But one of the things that I know you've brought up before is your financial Fridays. Talk about that.
Yeah. So again, this is how it all twists together. It always bothered me. I'm teaching innovation, leadership, and business, but I don't have a business of any type. And, back when my daughter took the course or your daughter took the course, I don't think it cheapened their experience, but I'm a big practice what you preach guy. And I'm like, man, I gotta have something. And I'd think and think and think. And the financial business was a great start for me because it doesn't involve a lot of startup. It really just involves getting licensed, which wasn't easy. I had to get up every morning, study, take tests. That was during COVID, and you have to be sponsored by a company. And I didn't know how it was going to grow, but at least when I started that and started the LLC in accordance to that, it made me happy that I've got something now, right?
Yeah.
And kids don't care. I cared. And then in the meantime, I have equity in 2 other businesses because of that. It's funny how when that starts happening, it happens, right?
It happens. And real quick, not to interrupt, but I have to. All this with a full-time job, a wife, 2 kids going through college at the time, teaching, a career, a safe career, if you will, in many ways, a pension in your near future, a wife's pension in the near future, whatever other retirement you have, you still found the time and the motivation to go back and do all of this. So all these people with stories of, I'm too busy, I can't, I'll wait till the right moment, I'll wait. I just have to point that out. You did it all under those circumstances. Continue.
Well, thank you. And it's never been more fun. I mean, I literally don't know what day of the week it is. I mean, I do from my calendars, but let me say, I don't care what day of the week it is. Does that
Better
make
put,
sense?
yeah. Oh, it makes sense. Yes.
And I feel bad for a lot of people because I know not everybody has the same lot in life, but if you start changing some daily habits in a year, you won't recognize yourself in 2 years, but people want it to happen in a week. So, but it's great. I mean, you've been the biggest mentor to my class. You come in all the time, almost at a moment's notice. The kids have your text. Matter of fact, that's how we got the idea for this podcast. You'd come in and talk to the kids about your 4 pillars:
Yeah.
truth, meaning, trade-off, and perspective. And I'm like, I like those. I can't steal them because I see them too much. So let's start a podcast. And, it's been fun. And to me, believe it or not, I don't always like talking to people. I like my quiet time. But again, what's it worth if you don't have something to compare it to, which is all the busy times of your life? If I was just sitting home every day, the quiet time wouldn't be as valuable to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Let me back up because I interrupted you. So you get your licensing and your motive was, hey, look, I want to teach these kids finance and give them something, but man, I feel a little bit less. I don't know what the word is. You just didn't feel it was quite had enough behind you maybe to do it the right way. So instead of just going, oh well, you went, let me go create my own financial business and do it on your own, which, again, you probably hear that out loud or think of it and go, holy cow, I can't believe that I actually did that. So that's where we were. Continue, please.
yeah, sorry, I did a little bird walking there. I didn't even know where I was going. So yeah, we do Financial Fridays. It's not always on Friday because the way our program works, we get opportunities to leave the classroom all the time. But it's most Fridays, or sometimes we call it Money Monday, whatever. And I basically help the kids understand the importance of the different asset classes in general. It doesn't have to be money, right? Because you touch base on it. It could be real estate. I've got some kids that are really into the cryptocurrency now, so I have relationships and they're getting lessons on that. I mean, if anything, diversify, right? The more asset classes you have, the better. But when you're a teenager, really, you're not going to go buy a rental property. I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
Right.
You're in a selfish enough time in your life anyways. And what you can do is create income. You can go shovel driveways, you can tutor, you can work a couple whatever hourly jobs, in your free time, and you can save half, spend half, whatever. But once you create some cash flow, we start showing them the numbers and hypotheticals of what just $25 a month or $50 a month can do started at 18. And then we get into the stock market and we get into trading, which I don't endorse at all. I like the long game, especially when you're 18. But I feel they have to understand that. And we do some hypothetical games where they experience some losses and they're like, whoa, I don't like the stock market now. What's the other option? I'm like, well, the other option is you can get ETFs or REITs or mutual funds through advisors where they manage it for you. And they're like, whew, okay, I kind of like that idea. And then we get into the fact when you have a career someday, you're probably going to have a 403B, an IRA, a 401k, or what you'll have some retirement plan. Max that out. Now you know enough. You have some money on the side where maybe you put it in your own fund or you go to a financial planner and do that. When I crunch the numbers at what they could have, not at retirement, but at 40, they're like, are you kidding me? Yeah. And some of them buy in. So like we're in the stage of the year right now where kids are starting to open up their own TD Ameritrade accounts. I mean, I'll be very clear. None of them open anything through me. I want them to just get started. So they open up their own accounts. But the funniest thing is if they're not 18, their parents have to open it with them. And it has to be a custodial account. And I said, think about this. The first power move you make when you're 18 years old is you drop your parents off your investment accounts. That's called adulting. And they love that. And they're, it's funny. I can always tell how the parents are because some parents are all in for this. Some parents are a little worried. They might have been busted in 2008 or whatever loss or sold when they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a lot of kids do it. Some don't. And what I'm finding, they still listen because I get phone calls years later when they come back to me, and it's better to start your current time than never. And the hardest thing is they don't ever realize themselves being old enough where this matters right now. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Oh, of course.
And one of our pillars is perspective. And I've come up with this saying lately. I go to the kids, when coaches talk to you, when parents talk to you, when I talk to you, when anybody older talks to you, you got to at least bring it in and filter it because they've been your age, but you've never been their age.
Mm, well
So
said.
I'm not saying they make all the right decisions,
Of
or
course.
I'm not saying they even still make any right decisions, but they've been your age. They can't even vision being 50. It seems like 1,000 years from now.
Yep.
So when we teach financial literacy, it's like ask your parent, get some money going. Ask your parents if they want to buy a rental property with you. I have students that have started lawn mowing businesses and in grocery delivery services that we've had on this podcast,
Yep.
and the food truck boys, the cheese
Yep.
boys, and you know,
Amazing.
who knows if that business is going to be their business, but they're all learning to invest in something, and it's been become addictive, and they're going to know they can do it, and hopefully they reinvent themselves at some point like we have. But it's the beginning, right? So
It
that's why I
it
do
is.
Financial Fridays. It's not even just for finances. It's just to know there's a better way to have money work for you.
It's so great. I just love it. And the thing is, I had this conversation the other night with someone just on this type of topic, and I get people, or all I can think about is let's make sure we give as much money to certain people as we can, and let's try. I go, look, that'll never be the answer. The answer is financial knowledge. It's financial education. We should spend a lot more time worried about educating people financially, like you're doing with these kids, than look, if you said to me, hey, Matt, my daughter's 22, you can give her $1 million a day, or you can give her all the education that I try to give her and want to give her. I know the answer. The answer is it's not even close. What the education is worth and what you're giving these kids is worth way more than $1 million if they use it. Of course, they got to use it. You got to put it into action. But I think the focus needs to shift from giving people money to giving people knowledge about money and how these things work. Because you just hit it. What is $50 a month or a week or $25 a week look like for an 18-year-old at age 40? In that it means a lot more than giving them $1 million of them today and watching what they'll do with it. They'll have a boat and car, and it'll be gone. It'll be gone in a year on non-income producing assets. I just wanted you to tell what you just did because I think it's so important, and kudos to you for doing it.
Well, thank you. And I have a challenge out right now. It's not always popular with the parents. Some of the kids, listen, most kids are hard workers, especially when it comes to trying to make money.
Mm,
But if they don't have the right financial education, they're never going to have enough money.
exactly.
And
Perfect.
I challenge them, you're really good at making money. You already have when you graduate high school, you're going to have at least a semester of credits at the local community college. Why don't you go there a half a year or a year, or don't go anywhere, bank $10,000, invest it, then go live your life. And I mean, my kids didn't do that. Your daughter didn't do that. I'm not, but some kids, when they don't know what they want to go to college for, then why not do this? That year, it's not a gap year. I call it an investment year on your life, a cash flow year, a money
Yeah.
making year. And then you go back, they will be leaps and bounds past people at 40, 41 years old, 50 years old, whatever age. And I get a little kickback from parents like, no, they got to go to this private university and be in debt. Well, are you paying for it? Well, then let them do whatever they want to do. And, I don't care what they do. I just like giving lots of options. So
Yeah.
with my class, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I get to pick kids. We get to do almost whatever we want. We have so the first part of the curriculum's entrepreneurship. The second part of the curriculum, stepping outside of your comfort zone and building relationships. We talk about how important that is when they do their internships and shadows and community work. The third part's financial literacy. And then the fourth part is me, like literally the world is our classroom, And because of Twitter, I mean, I've recently got you back involved in Twitter, and you were on a space with us. I have kids on Twitter spaces. I meet people on Twitter that actually come in on Zoom and talk to our classroom. So not only are they meeting you, not only do they have a teacher with some businesses now, not only are they learning finances, not only are they working and building relationships, they're meeting the people they want to be in the future. And I don't know how you fail if you put any work in.
And these people they're meeting are from all over the world. I know some of them. I mean, it's just it's mind-boggling.
I mean, I just had some students build a merchandise store for an ex-Olympic boxer. I just talked to a person yesterday that's publishing a book with a very well-known author, and he's going to come speak with the class. I had somebody a couple weeks ago talk with the kids that works for Nike but does books on Amazon KDP. I mean, you get to talk in person, so they're extra blessed for that, right?
Extra.
If you're around it, you start thinking you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. And you said it just before. It doesn't matter how much money you give someone. It's the knowledge, education, and the experience and the rubbing elbows with the same types of people who think that way will change how you think and give you a perspective that you wouldn't have had on your own. I know I didn't. I needed it. I think we all do. And once you see that and you see that these are real human beings with the same challenges, problems, they're not, you know, what I always just kind of I've always come back to is I've never met anybody except for Mike Tyson that was so unbelievably special in a way that I was like, I could never be that. It's done just the opposite to me. I meet people and I go, wow, they've done special things, but they're not a special human being, you know, in terms of where I go, I could never do that except Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I mean, have you met Justin Bieber? I got to throw that in.
No.
That's on your bucket list though, right?
Oh God, I would love it. In fact, my wife and I were talking about a month ago that we gotta find out when he's in concert again near us so we can go. So, all right, go ahead. And then I got one.
So, you know, I want to say this because I want to hold myself accountable, and I mean it, that any teachers, I challenge you, find people on social media, connect with them, and bring them into your classroom for Zoom. I mean, I know we're living through tough times. Some schools at times aren't even in person, but you want to spice up your classroom, you bring somebody from the real world that's doing great things, and you ask them to come talk to your kids about themselves. 99% of them say yes.
I was going to say, how likely are they to participate?
It's amazing. I haven't had anybody say no. I've had a couple defer. You know, I got it. Listen, I do all this on social media, but I've got a new job. It's not the time right now. Or, you know, I'm going to be on vacation in 3 weeks. I just can't come in the morning. Or, you know, different time zones are always real curious. But, you know, I joke with myself because on Twitter I have the tagline, "I'm the teacher you wish you had in high school."
Right.
And I don't mean that because I'm the greatest teacher in the world. I'm not even that smart. Yeah. I will connect my students with more people, I guarantee you, than almost every other teacher in the country. And I mean that. I think I do.
I do too. And you live what you preach in a very real and profound way. And you know, just the licensing you got in your investment business, and that doesn't say everything about you, because you're much more than that. And I mean that as a very sincere compliment. But that says so much about you. And when you say bring people into your classroom, it's not because you're preaching it, you're doing it. And I don't think you find it to be that difficult. Because of your sincerity, and because you're so honest about it, and because you're so willing to take a back seat to other people to let them provide value to your classroom. You don't have to be the star. You don't have to be the one that everyone pats on the back and says, "Thanks, Mr. Richmond. You're just so great." That you don't need any of that. You don't have the ego behind you in that sense. You have an ego in your own way, and we all do. And it's just the way you handle yourself and the way you put them first. and the way they're willing to go to work for them, not during school hours, during whatever hours it takes, is just, it's so amazing to see. And I'm sure there's a lot more teachers out there like that that I know of. I'm sure there's tons of them, and
We'd love to have them on the podcast.
Yeah,
if
yeah, we
they're out
would. We would. We'd love to hear those stories, because I do think sometimes teachers get a bad rap for this, for hey, just all they care about is vacation, their summers off or whatever. Because I know that's not the truth for most of them. But I think what you do, and you being out there as a teacher so openly, and what you do is hopefully inspiring. But it just, you're giving so much to your students, and they're reaping the benefits for the rest of their lives, whether they realize it or not.
I appreciate that. And, it's unfortunate because the media will cover a negative story about a teacher or a school district 20 times faster than they will a positive story. So, hey, I'm sure we'll have some teachers on in the future. That's going to be my next vision quest, to hook up with some of them through Twitter or LinkedIn, and we'll get some coming on, because there's so many good ones. And maybe I can learn from them, because I know they're doing stuff I don't know that I can do.
Right, of course, as is the case for all of us in anything we do. So that's one of the great things we get out of these relationships and experiences. So we're running out of time here. So with that said, I wanted to ask you. Well, I was going to ask you a couple things, but you touched on a couple of them. But one that you mentioned before that I wrote down is, you said you used to love movies, right? Historical movies with a story behind it. Give me 1, 2, 3 of them that I need to watch, or anybody listening or watching needs to watch. Give us something to learn.
Back in the day, this was, I actually have the VHS series stacked in my basement. I'm sure now you can stream it or buy it. I loved Band of Brothers.
Oh yeah, that was great.
You talk about what young people were doing in the 40s, right? World War II, the greatest generation. And you have some issues. They call themselves the greatest generation, but they were pretty special, right?
Yeah.
And that's not anybody's fault that you don't have something like that to conquer. I mean, I guess to kids nowadays, you could argue the pandemic's just what you're just a victim of your times.
Right.
But you talk about perspective. I love that story. I love, it's a little fictional, but I love Gladiator.
Okay. Yeah.
You talk about a guy that was on top of his game, a general, and then gets sold into slavery. I mean, he didn't whine and complain. Current ones, I like Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched that yet.
The one I'm watching right now, I mean, I'm a few weeks behind because I've been sort of busy, but you know what? It's almost more fun to get behind and then just sit down 2 or 3 hours and bang out a couple episodes. I get so mad when I was watching Game of Thrones. I didn't start till season 4. I'm watching it. I'm just binging it at night, a couple hours a day. Nothing was going on. And then when I caught up, I only get like 50 minutes and I'm done.
Right.
I had a problem with that. But 1883 is a prequel to Yellowstone.
I've seen that. Yep.
We were talking about it in class yesterday. None of us would have made it. The joke in class was how long into the trip till we would have just quit.
Oh, see, I haven't started watching it. I just saw that it's out there. It looks like something I would enjoy. That's why I've been paying attention.
And Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, like, you wouldn't even know they're famous country singers. They're 2 of the stars in it.
Yeah.
But I won't give anything away, but just some of the everyday things they're trying to do where people die. Now, it's one snapshot of people trying to cross the frontier, right?
Yes.
But they're trying to encapsulate almost everything that can go right and wrong within the trip. But wait till you see the river crossing. Like, it's just an average day. I go over 3 rivers a day probably when I travel all around town. And I'm like, boom.
Well, that's one of the things I love about these types of movies and books like this that I read. It provides so much perspective. I ask in your classroom and others I've been in, I said, basically the question I'm trying to get out there is, what do you think of the world we're living in today? And all I hear is this, oh, it's awful, it's terrible, it's this, it's all these negatives. And what I want people to recognize is you're living in the safest, best time in the history of mankind. Doesn't mean we don't have problems. Doesn't mean there aren't issues. There are, and we should do our best to overcome them and work on them. But you need to back up for a minute and understand a little history. Like you said, getting across a river would be, I'm sure, an all-day event that could kill you. In 1883 or whatever it was here. So. Oh, go ahead.
No, finish.
No, what I was going to say, so those are some good movies or stories that I wanted to ask about. My final question for you is this.
Can I ask you something first?
Of course.
Do you think we live in the safest time today? I feel, but I feel like we have the fewest people ever that have been challenged by anything.
Yes, I agree with you. We live in the safe, and I say this, I'm not saying it just haphazardly, pulling it out of my pocket. Read some books. One of them that comes to mind is a book by Steven Pinker called Enlightenment Now. He's got a follow-up to that. I'm pointing up here because my book, my little library is up there. I have 3 or 4 books on the subject, basically showing statistically that we are living in the safest time in human history. And we have got the least amount of conflict, least amount of violence and disease and all these things. We're at the best time to be alive. It's unquestionable when you want to compare the data. But again, doesn't mean there aren't problems. But to your point, I think one of the things it does is it's created very soft human beings, particularly in our country and Western countries. So we've got a lot of soft people who don't know how to deal with conflict, so or problems or whatever the case may be. And now when things happen, look, I think one of the famous things is we only know the worst things we know. And the worst things we used to know were crossing a river, and being worried about getting murdered all the time. That was life. That was a way of life. Now we don't worry about those things. So instead we worry about whether someone microaggressed us, and that is the hardest thing for us to deal with because we don't know anything else. So we have very soft
Wi-Fi and streaming issues.
Right, yeah, those things, and I'm guilty of getting upset about streaming issues as well. And so we have very soft people because of all the wonderful technologies we've created, and we've got good government for the most part. And nobody likes to complain about government as much as I do, but we've got really good government. We've got good justice systems, all in all, not perfect by any means. So we've got all these wonderful things that have made life so easy for us that we will get upset because why isn't this downloading quicker? It's been 5 seconds, and I'm guilty of all that as well. So yes, we have soft people, and I'm probably certainly one of them. So we look at things, we've lost perspective. And it's one of the reasons I love to read and watch historical movies like Band of Brothers or whatever the case may be and go, how would I have reacted in that situation? Not very well, probably. So
who knows?
So who knows? You're right. So with that said, my final question is this. You deal with younger kids all the time, younger students, and we talk about them a lot all the time for good reason. And I think, one of the advantages they do have, though, is they don't have the responsibilities and the commitments people our age might have. So it's easier for them to take some risks. It's easier for them to do some things because they have time to make it up if they make a mistake. They learn from it and they're better off from it, whether it works or not. But if you're 40 years old, 45 years old, you got a mortgage, you got a wife and some kids, you've got financial responsibilities, you got 2 car payments, and you're watching the clock tick, and you're going, this isn't what I thought my life would be. I'm behind. I'm not accomplishing the things I want. I'm going to retire, but man, retirement's not going to look as pretty as I was hoping. Do you have any books? Do you have any advice? How do you take that person? And this is what I deal with a lot. How do you take that person and give them a boost, a lift, an inspiration to go, no, it's not over for you. My gosh, it's not over. How do you help that person who has some things they want to accomplish, but they're scared?
Books are great. I mean, I listen to a lot of books. We have the Audible versus really reading the book debate a lot, you and I. But the first thing I would do is and I mean this in all sincerity, find a way to create some extra cash flow. You could be a DoorDash driver. Like, you don't even have to see the customer. You sign up. My wife and I were looking into this the other day. It looks actually kind of fun. You sign up and you pick up the food at the restaurant, you drop it off at the person's door. Everything's exchanged electronically. And you take that extra money and now you go to a conference, or you invest it in something you think you want to pursue, or maybe you raise a couple thousand and you can get a rental property. But I think it starts with, well, it starts with financial literacy, because I don't think you can really reinvent who you want to be if you don't have some extra cash flow to do it. And I'm not talking hundreds of thousands. I'm talking $200 a month can be a game changer at first. Does that make, like, so, I mean, you could read any book you want, but I'm afraid you won't take action. But if you go find a little extra income, now you've taken action. What you do with it, maybe now while you're making that extra income, you go read a book about asset allocation or income producing assets. But if you can't create a little cash flow at first, I think you're just going to be stuck where you're always stuck. The other asterisk to attach to that is keep meeting people. Keep meeting people, telling your story, listen to their story, because maybe you're saving up all this little extra cash, $100, $200 a month, then you meet the right person that shares a vision with you, and you can go on from there. But I think it really can be that simple, but it's not going to come overnight. Took me 8 months to get licensed.
Yeah.
Took me 10 months before I had my first client, and now I have 20. 8 months later after that.
Yeah.
It's almost overwhelming, but it didn't happen overnight. Who knows? I bet you 2 years from now, I don't even recognize myself.
I agree. I agree. And guess what? And we'll end it there, because that's perfect. If you look back from 2 years, 3 years, I don't recognize who you are today, and I mean that. And I mean that in such a deeply respectful way, to have the pleasure of witnessing what you've done these last couple of years, and how you've not only reinvented yourself, but in the process inspired a lot of other people by doing so. And if frankly, Paul, if it wasn't through that growth and what I see you, I don't think we'd be sitting here together, because I need the inspiration. I love the inspiration for that. That's where the interest comes in. That's where the conversations come together, and all the other things, and the things that you've shown me, whether it's through financial education, through how you interact with people through the social media, and what that brings to the table, and what those offerings can be, has been eye-opening to me. So for that, I thank you. So with that, I think we'll end it. Thank you for sharing all that with us. That was an enjoyable ride.
Thank you. And, I'll end with a Forrest Gump quote, Matt. Me and you are almost like peas and carrots, Hey, take care. Until next time.
Sounds great.
Thank you.